Far Out magazine just named Moby Dick the greatest drum solo of all time. And I gotta be honest with you, I don't even think that's the best representation of John Bonham. In fact, I've always found Moby Dick to be kind of a bore. Not bad, not unskilled, just missing the thing that actually made John Bonham one of the greatest drummers who ever lived. Now, before anyone grabs a pitchfork, this is not a criticism of Bonham. Quite the opposite. The real issue here isn't really Moby Dick. It's the idea that a drum solo is where a drummer proves their greatness, especially a drummer like Bonham. Here's the core problem. Moby Dick isolates Bonham from the very thing that made him legendary, which is the band Led Zeppelin. When you listen to Led Zeppelin at their peak, Bonham isn't just playing drums, he's driving the music. He's got swing, he's got groove, he's got immense physical force behind the band, and that's where his greatness lives. In Moby Dick, especially live versions that stretch past 10, 15, even 20 minutes, you lose that context. What you're left with is repetition, extended hand drumming sections, and rhythmic wandering. Is it musically compelling the whole time? I gotta be honest, I start to check out after a minute or so. This is where I'm gonna push back, because lists like this tend to reward length, endurance, flash, and reputation, but those aren't necessarily what makes a great drummer or even a great drum solo. Bonham's genius wasn't about showing off, it was in feel, timing, and putting weight behind every note. When you listen to When the Levee Breaks or Kashmir or Good Times, Bad Times or Dazed and Confused, Bonham at his peak, not isolated, not trying to impress, but obliterating the groove. Moby Dick turns him into a soloist, and Bonham's greatness was that he never sounded like he needed to be one. The uncomfortable truth here is that I'm really not a fan of drum solos in general, and I know that's going to divide some people. But think about it, most drum solos remove harmony, melody, interaction. They take the most context-dependent instrument in rock, the drums, and strip away the band, which is the context. So what are you left with? Most drum solos go on a little bit too long, and unless you're deeply invested as a fellow drummer or a superfan, they can get repetitive. That doesn't mean that drum solos are useless, but it does mean they're a very specific kind of listening experience, not necessarily the ultimate test of a drummer. And if we're going to look at what is the greatest drum solo, we might look at the one that has the most impact on listeners. If you want to understand why John Bonham is legendary, I wouldn't start with Moby Dick. I would start with somewhere else. I would start with Black Dog. I would start with rock and roll. I would start with Houses of the Holy or Custard Pie. Because Bonham could make a song feel like it might collapse under its own weight and then recover at the last moment, and that's his true power. So, is Moby Dick the greatest drum solo of all time? Well, maybe, but if you care about what made John Bonham actually great, it's not even close to the top of the list of his greatest accomplishments. And honestly, the more I think about it, the more I wonder if the greatest drummers aren't the ones who solo the longest, but the ones who never need to solo at all. Let me know what you think in the comments below.
Music Guru here, asking you to help us on our march to 10,000 subscribers.
Everyone's focused on the upcoming reunion tour with Annika Niles. Will it work live? Will it feel right without Neil Peart? But I think we're all looking in the wrong place, because if Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson take the next step with Annika, they're going to release new music